Welcome to the Wednesday morning devotions, and we're on today Genesis 3, verses 14 to 19, which looks at three curses which God gives in response to the fall of man into sin. So beginning read at verse 14. The Lord God said to the serpent, "Because you have done this, cursed are you above all livestock, and above all beasts of the field. On your belly you shall go, and dust you shall eat all the days of your life. I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and her offspring. He shall bruise your head, and you shall bruise his heel." To the woman he said, "I will surely multiply your pain in childbearing. In pain you shall bring forth children. Your desire shall be for your husband, and he shall rule over you." And to Adam he said, "Because you have listened to the voice of your wife, and have eaten of the tree of which I commanded you, you shall not eat of it. Cursed is the ground because of you. In pain you shall eat of it all the days of your life. Thorns and thistles it shall bring forth for you, and you shall eat the plants of the field. By the sweat of your face you shall eat bread, till you return to the ground, for out of it you are taken. For dust you are, and to dust you shall return." These verses are indeed very solemn, and yet these are crucial verses for us to understand what is happening in the world around us. And the answer to so many questions of what's happening in the world comes indeed from these verses. Well, first of all, hear the curse on the serpent in verses 14 and 15. And verse 14 seems to speak very much about the physical serpent that was there in the garden. And it speaks of how it is destined to indeed slither on its belly. It's led to speculation. Did serpents before this have legs so they could have been more upright? Well, we'll have to ask God that when we get to glory. But then in verse 15 it moves from the physical serpent to the spiritual being who is the devil, and really what will happen between the devil in the future. And here we see it speaks of conflict between the devil's offspring and the woman's offspring. Now this must be a shock to the devil, because he probably thought when he got the woman to sin and to fall that indeed all her offspring would belong to the devil. And indeed many people do continue to belong to the devil. Anybody who doesn't belong to Christ, their father is indeed the devil. Jesus himself said that. But what is being taught here, there will be a line, there will be offspring who indeed are from the woman who will not belong to the devil. And ultimately that is pointing to the seed who is Jesus. The devil will bruise his heel, speaking of how on the cross the devil would inflict pain upon Christ. But Jesus will crush his head. Think of how Paul, writing to the Colossians, speaking of how by the cross Jesus made a public spectacle of the forces of evil. He defeated the devil on the cross, because the devil only has power and influence when people are separated from God by their sin. When Jesus deals with that sin and people are brought back to God, the devil loses his power. The devil is defeated. And so there's this conflict between the godly line of Christ and those who belong to the devil. And that's one of the reasons why there's so much suffering, there's so much evil in the world. The devil and his seed continues to create such mayhem. And then moving on, in verse 16 we have the curse on the woman. Different aspects to this again. First of all, pain in childbirth, which should have been the greatest highlight of a woman's life, and in bringing forth a child now will be something surrounded by pain. And we know in many cases a lot of complications, and over the years including death for many women. But also it speaks of conflict between the woman and her husband. It says there that your desire will be for your husband. In chapter 4 it speaks in verse 7 about the desire of sin to conquer Cain. And so this desire for her husband is a desire from the woman to to dominate him, to control him. God's plan, God's purposes of creation are now the natural order is being turned upside down. It speaks of how the husband will rule over his wife, and this probably speaks now, includes harsh and unloving rule, where before Adam's rules would have been one of love and kindness. It's going to be replaced with a cruel rule. And so we can see that in relationships between husbands and wives, so many marriages not happy and so many marriages breaking down. We think of how there's conflict in this world. There's a breakdown in human relationships when there has been a breakdown in the relationship with God. So we have the curse on the serpent, we have the curse on the woman, and then thirdly we have the curse on Adam in verses 17 to 19. First of all, we're told that the ground is cursed because of that. And here we have the curse upon the whole world. Why is there sickness? Why is there so much pain in this world? Here's the answer. God has cursed this world because of the sin of Adam and the sin which we have inherited from him. It speaks of how indeed, the end of verse 17, there will be pain. Verse 18, there will be thorns and thistles in the ground. Now there will be hard sweat by which man will indeed be able to bring food from the ground. Labour, work before which would have been a delight, now becomes a hard toil. The curse of God has fallen upon this world. Why is this world tough? Why is there pain? Why is there suffering? Why is there so much sadness? God has cursed this world because of sin. And sin must be so serious, so dreadful in the eyes of a loving God that he would so curse the world because of it. Sin is not trivial. Sin brings down God's curse and judgment. It's interesting just to mention to thorns and there in that verse 18. Remember the second Adam, Jesus? What was placed on his head? Thorns. The curse of God would fall on Jesus. He would come to deliver people from the curse by becoming a curse himself. And then it says, from dust you are, and to dust you shall return. Just reminds what is said so often at funerals. Dust to dust, earth to earth, ashes to ashes, dust to dust. That's where it comes from. Death is a result of sin. Death has come into this world because of Adam's sin. That's why people die. And death will not just be the separation of body and soul. Death will include eternal death in hell itself if we do not come back and trust in the second Adam, the Jesus who would come and be tempted by the devil and wouldn't give in, would remain perfect, obedient all the way to the cross, so that indeed the curse of God could be removed from us one day in the new heavens and new earth. Oh, this is a challenging passage as we think of the curse of God. But we can turn from the curse of God to the blessing of God. But not through religion, not through our good deeds, but through Jesus alone. May God give you grace to look to him. Amen.